in America and being African American. I don't know if you had the chance to kind of conversate or engage in conversation with somebody who's actually African American, so an American Black born person, comparing it to your struggles with, let's say, obviously you were a student in multiple colleges. How was, like, obviously fees differed because then you come in as an international student, whereas they're coming in as a student from, like, in their home. How did you notice the difference in, like, pay, or like in the ways you had to pay your taxes or anything with getting jobs and all of that as an African? And I don't know if you have the chance to speak to an American, like an African American, about that difference, and if you've seen the differences between you and an African American.
Yeah, so you're asking me about my experience as a student, or in general about this experience
Right.
of blackness and how it differs from each region to region and state to state or country to country, right?
Country to country more so. Yeah.
Okay. Now, at the official level, you don't notice much difference. It's like being black is just being black. It's not being in most spaces. It's not being European of European background, but it also means something more than that. It's also being post-colonial, having suffered the consequence of societies that were dominated by other actors who might have been foreign. So it's a question of identity and belonging. Um, and on which space do you own and which one you don't own. So when you come to America as an international student, in a Western space, African Americans are also Americans. So they are Westerners in that sense, okay? So their views of life are comparable to what an average American view of life will be, worldview in general. But as an African, there's a slight difference. Even that, within that, there's also little nuances based on backgrounds of class. So wealthy African students are different from working class African students, as well as rural living African student. And those nuances play out in relationship that people make. All right. But in a Western space, they being an African, sort of being is sometimes not nuanced enough. There's a tendency to generalize that as on Africa as a collective identity, and also to racialize it. So it's like create different distinction of what it means to be an African. So it's like the difference of North African versus a person from Horn of Africa, Ethiopian or Somali, different from is the Bantu speaking African countries.
Right.
Yeah, and those kind of nuances exist in society, and how you vis and how you're viewed and how you occupy a space. But it's not like just the ideational issues too. It's they also have real time meanings and privilege that might go unspoken about. All right, so those consequences play out in your socialization, and our society thinks about what you could be. But fundamentally, for many Africans, is super ignorant about a shared experience of blackness, one of being subjugated. So here in the Western space, it's more about a racialized history or history of losing freedom and or lack of rootedness, lack of a consequence of dislocation, right? But
Right.
while in an African sense, it's more of like colonial domination. Both of these are subjugations. The forces of violence and have impact on identity, but they are processed differently in
Okay.
different spaces. I don't know if that makes sense. So
No, that
this,
makes sense.
yeah. So
Um,
then there's the other idea of taxes, right? So that's more like a state policy issue. So some countries have